Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I hope you're all well and having a blessed Ramadan, inshallah, and may you all have a happy Eid with your families. I'd like to welcome you to our weekly Islamic parenting webinar, which is live every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Please feel free to leave us your comments and your questions. We're live on Facebook and YouTube as well. So today we're discussing the rulings of Eid and Zakat al-Fitr with our guest Imam Hussam al-Din. He's the head of education department in Muslimito. Also, he's a member of Al-Azhar Fatwa Global Center. As well, he's a lecturer in the faculty of Sharia and Law in Al-Azhar University. Assalamu alaikum, Imam Hussam.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. I hope you are doing great as well.
Yes,
And
I'm doing good.
still,
Alhamdulillah.
I can say blessed Ramadan or Ramadan Mubarak. And
Yes,
so, inshallah, happy Eid to you and to everyone.
thank you. Same to you. Today we're discussing the rulings of Eid and Zakat al-Fitr. If we can start with Zakat al-Fitr. What is the Zakat al-Fitr, Imam
Yeah.
Hassan?
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, all praises due to Allah, the Almighty, the Lord of all. May Allah's peace, mercy, and blessings be upon His final and last messenger, Muhammad. And may Allah's peace, mercy, and blessings be upon each and every one of you, dear viewers from across the globe, watching us now. Of course, I'd like to start with wishing everyone a happy Eid, inshallah, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of our good deeds throughout the blessed month of Ramadan. Uh, Definitely, it's very important for us as Muslims to be aware of the rulings of Zakat al-Fitr because of the fact that it serves and it functions very vital a very vital role when it comes to our good deeds and our relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one of the pieces of wisdom of the legislation or behind the legislation of Zakat al-Fitr is for it to serve as a compensation for any flaw or any shortcoming in one's fasting. So you see here this comprehensive wisdom. How is it? The fasting of the month of Ramadan, one of its wisdoms as well, or pieces of rationale, is giving the individual the opportunity to feel for the poor and the needy. And
Mhm.
then at the end of the month of Ramadan, another act of worship that supplements and consolidates the fasting is a direct help to the poor and the needy. So this is why in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, we find the guidance of giving zakat al-fitr or the charity of breaking one's fasting to the poor and the needy in order to help them and to assist them, so much so on the days of Eid they are not in need of asking for help, and so that everyone in the community is in a position to experience the merriment and the joy of the Eid.
Mhm. I see, yeah. So what is its ruling for Zakat al-Fitr?
Yeah, it is wajib, that's it is mandatory
Yeah.
on every adult Muslim. So for all of those who are adults and they have the amount that is excess of or that exceeds what they need on the day of Eid, they are required to provide or to give out zakat al-fitr. Also,
Mhm.
there are some Muslim scholars who say that it is obligatory on all the members of the family. So much so that we have even within the jurisprudence the opinion that even on the embryo in the womb of the mother there is a zakat al-fitr when it comes to the guardian or the head of the family. And this is why also another point of detail, if if the person uh, is uh, is deceased or passes away before the sunset of the last day of Ramadan. So they said in this case it is also mandatory on their part to give zakat al-fitr, and this can be done from the inheritance.
I see. Yeah. Um, so like the is there a wisdom behind its legislation?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Always we understand that we comply with or we perform whatever obligation that Allah
Hmm.
subhanahu wa ta'ala instructs us to do, because we know that this is from the all wise, from the all just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And speaking in particular, when it comes to Zakat al-Fitr, they said that the wisdom behind it is very clear in the statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as he said, make sure that you make them in a position with which they are not in need of asking for help. So this is the point. It is to enrich the poor and the needy in the community so that they are in a position to enjoy the Eid and to experience the happiness of the Eid without feeling that they don't have enough or they feel disadvantaged or not in a position to be experiencing the merriment of the Eid like everyone else in the community. So it is to show this social solidarity and togetherness within the community.
Hmm. I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when is it due?
This is a very important question, and I'm sure it's on the minds of so many of our dear respected viewers. It has to be given out or delivered to the poor and the needy
Hmm.
before the performance of the Eid prayer. Does this mean, this is a question now, does this mean that we have to wait all the way till we hear the adhan or the call to prayer for the Fajr of the day of Eid to give Zakat al-Fitr, or can it be given out before this time? The answer
Yeah.
is yes, it is permissible to give out the charity of breaking the fasting like 2 days or 3 days before the end of the month of Ramadan. So this is permissible.
All
Other
right.
scholars, they maintain that, or they hold the view that it is actually permissible to give out zakat al-fitr even from the beginning of the month,
Hmm.
because they say that once the month starts or commences, and when the person is engaged in fasting, in this case they are obliged to give out the charity of the fasting. So we have this flexibility within the Islamic jurisprudence as to the timing or the exact time for giving out zakat al-fitr. So with this being said, we can look into the needs of the community, especially at a time, at a very critical time like ours with the corona pandemic. We can uh, do our best, of course, to help the poor and the needy as much as it is established that they need it. So we don't have to wait all the way till the break of the dawn of the first day of the Eid.
I see. Yeah.
Mhm.
And speaking about the needy people, um, who do you think are the recipients? Should be they only the needy people we meet in the streets, or
Mhm.
do we have other people as well that we need to
Yeah.
look for?
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. The recipients of the Zakat al-Fitr are the same recipients of the obligatory zakat or the obligatory charity or the poor dues. So we have eight recipients that are mentioned of the verse of the zakah. So all of these people, they are also the recipients, or they are the ones who deserve to receive or to be given or to be provided with the cattle fund. So be it the poor and the needy, the one who is traveling and they don't have enough money, be it for fi sabilillah, like for example building mosques and all what comes under the category of fi sabilillah or for the sake of Allah, because we have Muslim scholars who elaborated and who maintain that the concept of fi sabilillah is a comprehensive concept that comprises all that which is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the name indicates. So the same recipients that we have, the eight recipients, they are also the same when it
Mhm.
comes to Zakat al-Fitr. Uh, Also, you highlighted a very important point, Ustad Nasra, and that's like where to find them, especially
Yeah.
nowadays. I have actually received this question many times, several times recently, especially given the current situation of the lockdown in many parts of the world.
Yeah.
In this case, we can donate it via online means if this is possible, and to entrust trustworthy charitable organizations to do this on one's behalf. So
Mm.
if we know that, and if it can be established that there is a trustworthy charitable organization that will take this money, even if it's via online means, not necessarily directly or face to face, and they will be able to reach out and be able to provide the zakat al-fitr to the recipients or the due uh, deserving people. In this case, it is permissible as well, and there is no need to expose anyone's safety to any danger.
I see. Yeah.
And
Uh,
yeah, if I just may add another point
yes,
in this
please.
regard, Ustaz Nasra, please. Uh, yes, I understand, and I'm sure that this is a question that will come. I'm sure you have this on your agenda for today's webinar, and that's, is it possible to give it in the form of money or to?
I was about to ask.
Yeah, thank you so
Yeah.
much for that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Uh,
so Alhamdulillah, yes.
Because
This is a very
yeah.
important point, and always, it seems to be like an issue of dispute and even controversy within some Muslim communities. Is it permissible to give the monetary value of zakat al-fitr, or no? We have to limit it to be in the form of grains and wheat and only the specified types of food. Alhamdulillah, the Islamic jurisprudence has flexibility, and we have more than one valid opinion in this regard. And
Mm.
we have many scholars from the Hanafi school and also from the Shafi'i school of Islamic jurisprudence, and others, especially among the contemporary Muslim scholars and many fatwa councils that hold and maintain the view that it is totally permissible to provide or to give out the zakat al-fitr in the form of money. Why
Mm.
so? They looked into the wisdom or the rationale behind the legislation of zakat al-fitr, and they investigated and looked into the statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this
Salam.
regard. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam clearly states, enrich them on this day,
Mm.
so that they are not in need of begging or asking for help. So they said that in our times, it is even more of benefit, and it is even more of fulfillment to the purpose of the legislation of Zakat al-Fitr to give it in the form of money. Because back then, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, this was the normal day-to-day habit or custom of the people, if you like, to have as food. But now this is different nowadays. So what I'm trying to say is, Alhamdulillah, both opinions are valid. Both opinions have solid grounds to support them, and especially nowadays, and given the current unprecedented situation that our global human family is experiencing and going through, definitely it is very obvious that the need now is more for adopting this opinion of allowing or the permissibility of giving zakat al-fitr in the form of money. So the point that I'd like to stress here, this in general does not need to be an issue of controversy or dispute within our communities. And of course, given a situation or a circumstance like the one that we are going through, yes, inshallah, and it is permissible with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give zakat al-fitr in the form of money.
Yeah. And is there like a certain amount
This
that you
depends. This depends. So in this regard, because it has to do with, in this case with the amount of uh, of the food that is going to be provided. So in this regard, I recommend referring to the nearest fatwa council or Islamic center so that it is clear to the individual within a certain community or a certain part of the world, depending on the value of their currency to provide zakat al-fitr.
I see, yeah.
Yeah.
And can it be given to more than one individual?
Yes, in this regard, we have within the Islamic jurisprudence the opinions that maintain the point that yes, it is permissible
Hmm.
to provide or to give zakat al-fitr to more than one individual. And they said that the criterion for this is the need of the person. So, for example, if we have a family and they provide zakat al-fitr and they provide it to a certain individual or group of individuals or one family, and with this, they are not in need anymore of providing them with zakat al-fitr. And there are others who are still in need, especially when it comes to the day of Eid. In this regard, yes, we have within the Islamic jurisprudence the permissibility of giving zakat al-fitr to more than one individual.
I see, yeah. Jazakallah khair.
Yeah.
So, if we can move on to the Eid al-Fitr,
Mm.
if you can tell us about the significance of Eid al-Fitr.
Yeah, this is a great question, and especially in the current circumstances, we need to remember that this time is a time of happiness, it's a time of merriment, it's a time of drawing a smile on the members of our family, on the faces of our children and our neighbors and the entire community and everyone around us. So no matter how challenging the current situations are, we still need to remember that this is a time of Eid, and especially for our children and for their mental and well-being and health of their mentality, it is very important to not to deprive them of the happiness of the Eid, because this is the wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us and has provided us with the opportunity of the Eid al-Fitr, or the festival or the Bayram of breaking the fasting, and the second one, which is Eid al-Adha, or the Bayram of sacrifice. These are times of happiness, and they come uh, following or in the wake of uh, two important and vital acts of worship, be it with regard to the first, the fasting of the month of Ramadan, and when it comes to the second, the performance of the Hajj. So this is out of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He
SubhanAllah.
has legislated for us this time to feel happy, to enjoy, to relax, and to have the opportunity to spend more quality time with all our loved ones, and especially with our family members and our children. So let's not miss out on this, and let's make sure that we provide our family members with the right atmosphere and the right conditions so that they can experience the happiness of the Eid in conformity or in harmony with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated for us. So the time of the Eid, it is a time still of being conscious and mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and definitely it is not a time of negligence or disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I see. Yeah.
So
And
all forms of happiness and all forms of
mm,
expression of happiness, they are all permissible as long as we maintain a state of being mindful and being conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
subhanahu wa ta'ala. And any recommendations regarding the night before Eid?
Yeah, in this regard, we find that it was the practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions and the pious Muslims to be in a state of being engaged in acts of worship like the night prayer, like it's as if they are saying goodbye to the month of Ramadan. So the best way to say goodbye to this great month and this blessed month is by doing extra acts of worship, so that on the day of judgment it will come as a witness, and inshallah it will be a witness for our benefit and not the other way around. So this is why we need to remember that this is the end of the month. So in order to make up for anything that we missed, it is a great opportunity to hasten towards all the various acts of worship that would draw us nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the expected wisdom of every Muslim and every believer.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
see. Yeah. And what is the ruling of performing Eid prayer, Imam
Yeah,
Hassan?
some Muslim scholars maintain that it is fard, and others maintain that it is wajib, uh, depending a bit on the difference between the Hanafi and the non-Hanafi schools of thought. Others
Okay.
also maintain that it is sunnah muakkada, or that it is highly recommended to perform. So to be on the safe side, it is better to perform it. Uh, I mean the Eid prayer,
Hmm. I see.
and
And
not also to miss its reward.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah,
So when is the time for Eid prayer?
yeah. This is a very important question. It falls, or the time between for performing Salat al-Eid, uh, 20 to half an hour following sunrise, and 20 minutes all the way to 20 minutes before the Dhuhr prayer. So all this time is a time when it is permissible to perform the Eid prayer.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I will say it again. So the
Yeah.
time of performing Salat al-Eid starts with the passage of 20 minutes after the dawn.
Okay.
Um, and excuse me, not the dawn, but sunrise.
Sunrise. Yeah.
This is not the Fajr. For Salat al-Eid, 20 minutes after the rise of the sun, all the
Okay.
way to 20 minutes before the Dhuhr prayer. So again, 20 minutes after sunrise, all the way to 20 minutes before the time of Salatul Dhuhr, or the Dhuhr prayer, or the noon prayer.
Yeah. But most of the people they do it like and after sunrise,
Yes,
very
yes.
early in the morning. Yeah.
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 Yeah, and this was the custom, or this is what is customary when
More
most,
common. Yeah.
but definitely the ruling now is different, and I'm sure this will be a question for this webinar when it comes to how to pray Salat al-Eid at this time, because
Exactly.
we already have seen how is it many fatwa bodies have already issued a fatwa to the effect that it is permissible to perform Salat al-Eid at one's home, and including the senior authority of Al-Azhar's scholars. It has issued a clear fatwa in this regard, that it is permissible to perform Salat al-Eid at one's home.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, are there certain practices that we need to observe, in celebrating Eid al-Fitr, Imam Hassan?
Yeah, like everything that is permissible and brings about happiness to the family, to the community. All of this is permissible, and especially nowadays, we need to make sure that we maintain the ties of kinship or salat al-rahim by checking on everyone in the family and the extended family. Of course, given the current circumstances, it is not possible to visit them or to pay a visit to all the members of the family, but at least we have alternative means like the social media and the rest of the technologies. This is the
Virtual
least.
gatherings, they do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, yes. So this is the least that we can do by checking on everyone and greeting everyone and wishing them a happy Eid. And of course, in this regard, I would mention that it is not permissible uh, to observe fasting on the day of Eid in this
Mm,
regard, because also some
yeah.
people have this question. And yeah, like I mentioned, everything that is permissible and that is meant to bring about happiness, definitely this is what every Muslim need to be doing.
Yeah. So speaking about fasting during Eid, if you can tell us about the importance of fasting 6 days from the month of Shawwal.
Yeah, this is also a very important act of worship, and there are many questions that are relevant or related to fasting 6 days from the month of Shawwal. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in this context or in this regard is very clear, and that's whoever observes the fasting of the month of Ramadan and then follows it up with fasting 6 days from the month of Shawwal, it will be as if they have observed fasting for the entire year. And this is out of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How is it? Since one good deed is rewarded, and this reward is multiplied 10 times, thus we have 30 days and 6 days multiplied by 10, so we have 36 multiplied by 10, then the result is 360, and this is the number of the days of the year. So this is a great opportunity to attain the reward of fasting for the entire year. And this is out of the generosity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why every Muslim is encouraged to fast for only 6 days from the month of Shawwal. They don't have to be consecutive. It is better to hasten towards uh, fasting these days or observing the fasting for 6 days so that the person is still accustomed to fasting, but definitely it is not obligatory or mandatory
Mm,
to observe fasting for these 6 days right after the end of the Eid or the first day of the Eid. You may fast during the whole month of Shawwal. Just make sure that you fast them before the end of the month.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you can tell us more about the rulings of Eid and Zakat al-Fitr, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there are many questions that are related to this. So, for example, one of the questions is it permissible to combine between uh, fasting 6 days from the month of Shawwal and making up for some days that were missed during the month of Ramadan or not? We
Hmm.
have more than one opinion within the Islamic jurisprudence in this regard. Some Muslim scholars maintain the view that no, the Muslim is to first fast for the days that they missed, i.e., to make up first for the days that they have missed, and then they may fast any voluntary or subrogatory fasting, like the fasting of the 6 days of the month of Shawwal.
Mm.
However, we have also within the Islamic jurisprudence the scholars who maintain the view that yes, it is permissible to combine the intention of making up for the days that were missed during the month of Ramadan, along with making the observing of the fasting of the month of Ramadan, or observing uh, after making up, to observe also the fasting of the 6 days of Shawwal. So
Mhm.
again, it is permissible to combine the intention of making up the days that were missed during Ramadan, along with fasting 6 days from the month of Shawwal. It is important to clarify this. Another important point when it comes to making up for the days that the person missed during the month of Ramadan. Is it necessary to hasten towards making up for these days, or I may delay it all the way till the next Ramadan?
Mhm.
We find the statement of the Muslim scholars very clear in this regard. They encourage making up for the days that were missed during the month of Ramadan. So as much as we can, it is better to make up for these days, and to hasten towards making up for the days that were missed. And this begs the question of what is the ruling if the next Ramadan comes and still the individual hasn't uh, made up for the days that were missed. We have a statement here from the mother of the believers, Aisha, radiallahu anha wardaha, may Allah be pleased with her and all the mothers of the believers. She said that it was her custom, of course, in view of the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ, to make up for the days that she missed in Ramadan before the next Ramadan comes. So this is a clear statement from our mother Aisha in this regard. And on this basis, we find Muslim scholars who say that if the next Ramadan comes and the individual hasn't made up for the days that were missed, in this case, along with al-qada, or along with making up for the days that they missed, they need to provide fidya as well. They also need to provide a needy person with food from the average that the person consumes. So here, this is a very important point to keep in mind, that if the next Ramadan comes and you still haven't made up for the days that you missed of the previous Ramadan, not only that you will need to make up for the days that you missed, but you will need to give a fidya as well. So this is one opinion among the Muslim or the Islamic schools of thought. Other Islamic schools of thought hold the view that no, it is permissible to only make up for the days that were missed, even if the next Ramadan comes, and all what the person would need to do or be required to do is to make up for these days, even if the next Ramadan were to come. And out of these two opinions, the one that has the prevalence, or the one that is uh, relied on when it comes to fatwa, is the point that it is highly recommended to hasten towards making up for the days that the person missed before the coming of the next Ramadan, to be on the safe side in this regard. And they said as well, because the individual wouldn't know when would be the end of their life. So this is why, since they are, or even if something would happen to them and it would hinder them from observing the fasting for the days that they missed. So this is why they said it is preferable and it is recommended for the Muslim to make up for the days that they missed before the advent of the next Ramadan. Uh, Also, another important point that I'd like to mention when it comes to Eid, because we see that depending on citing the new crescent, there can be differences as to the
Mm.
start of the Eid. One point that I'd like to stress here is the fact that this is normal because of the fact that the earth is spherical. So this is why it is totally conceivable that the sighting of the new moon or the crescent of the month of Shawwal, it would be visible in some places and still it would not be visible in others. So what is it we are supposed to do? Follow the reliable and the well-established fatwa entity that's the nearest to your point or where you are located. This should not be an issue of dispute or having debates and arguments within our community. Definitely maintaining the unity of all Muslims and maintaining the stability of our communities. This is what is most important. So if the best of one's utmost is done, in this case, they follow what is available for them, and inshallah, they will get the whole reward for fasting the month of Ramadan and also the start of the month of Shawwal and observing the Eid.
Inshallah. If you can tell us a little bit about the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon with him, on Eid celebration.
Yes, this is a very important question, and it is one of the points that we really need to think about and to reflect on.
Mm,
And it is one of the great things about Islam. How is it we have the Prophet ﷺ as the role model, as a source of guidance, if you like, as to the right course of action that the Muslim needs to follow and to live up to even. Because the Noble Quran in this regard is very clear. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ. That's indeed you have in the example, in the character of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a role model to look up to and to follow into his footsteps. And this is the way for those who aspire for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being among the successful on the day of judgment. So definitely the Prophet ﷺ was very keen to guide and to provide the guidance when it comes to the religiosity of the companions and the practice of the Muslim when it comes to the Eid. He was always there, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to congratulate all his companions and all the members of the community on the day of Eid. And this is why we understand from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that the Prophet ﷺ, he would go to the mosque through one way and he would return to his home through or via another way. Why? So that he can meet more people and congratulate them and wish them a happy time and express his happiness and his gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the month of Ramadan and all the acts of worship are over and hopefully they are accepted by the justice and by the wisdom and by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And still this is a reminder that we did so with the blessing and with the support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And since this is the case, we need to always be thankful for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this regard. Also, it was the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to wear or to put on his finest outfit on the day of Eid. Of course, out of expressing and demonstrating happiness and joy
mm,
over this noble occasion and to bring about happiness to the hearts of all the members of the community, and especially when it comes to the children. How that the Prophet ﷺ was always keen to be attentive to the young people and to the children and to make sure that they don't need anything on this day. And this is why we have the legislation of Zakat al-Fitr, and how is it one of the main points of its legislation, or the wisdoms behind this legislation, is to make sure that all the members of the community together they can share and enjoy the happiness of the Eid. Another practice of the Prophet ﷺ in this regard, i.e., when it comes to the Eid, is the fact that it is a time to still draw nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is why the Prophet ﷺ was always keen to encourage his companions to bring about happiness to all the members of the family. So this gives us a holistic understanding or view of, if you like, of how the Prophet ﷺ was on the day of Eid. I can see here a question also from one of our viewers, and that's when it comes to observing the Eid prayer at home, what do we do regarding the khutbah? Of course, we understand that in the daily, the normal days or the normal circumstances, we know that the way how the Eid prayer is performed is by performing two rak'ahat. In the first rak'ah, we do 7 takbirat, and in the second one, we do five. In this regard, given the current circumstances and in light of the permissibility of performing the Eid prayer at home, we don't need to have the khutbahs. So the validity, in more clear terms, the validity of performing the Eid prayer at one's home is not contingent on, or is not conditional on the two khutbahs. So the family can all of them they can pray together, and they don't need to have two khutbahs. So they just perform the two rak'ahat, or the 2 units of prayer, and after this they can just make dua, and there is no need for the khutbahs in order to ensure the validity of the prayer. And of course, this is one of the manifestations of the mercy of the Islamic Sharia in this regard. Uh, One point that I'd like to mention here as a reminder for all of us, because definitely we feel missing out that due to the current circumstances, we cannot pray the Eid together and meet everyone and
Yeah.
exchange congratulations on the day of the Eid, and especially for those of us who are accustomed to observing or performing the Eid prayer in the open spaces. Definitely, this has its own spiritual impact on the heart and the mind of the believer, and this is why all of us we feel missing all of these uh, spiritual uh, circumstances and such deep and profound atmosphere. What I'd like to mention here as a reminder for each and every one of us is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that we mentioned, Ustaz Nasra, at the beginning of the month of Ramadan, speaking of our inability to perform the Taraweeh prayer at the mosque. And that's the hadith or the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he clarifies that when the believer is accustomed to performing an act of worship, and then something happened and prevents them from performing or conducting or carrying out or offering this customary act of worship, like falling sick or like being on a journey, still out of the mercy and out of the generosity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the reward will be accredited to this individual. So let this be a piece of good news to all of us and to all of our dear respected viewers, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most generous, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is too generous to prevent us from attaining any rewards. Rather, as a matter of fact, with observing all the necessary precautionary measures against the infection with COVID 19, the reward is doubled. Yes, when we, and I repeat, when we observe and we put into practice and implement and observe all the necessary precautionary health measures to avoid the infection or the further spread of this pandemic, this per se is an act of worship. So here we have the reward of
Mm,
complying with these measures, and that's out of being keen on protecting the life of the individuals and, of course, protecting one's own life and everyone around them, in addition to the reward of the custom or being accustomed to praying the Taraweeh prayer and also praying the Eid prayer at the mosque or in a congregation or at an open space. So not only that we are getting the reward of performing all of these customary acts of worship or these acts of worship that we are accustomed to, rather, in addition to this, we get the reward of observing all these health measures. And this is a reason for us to be optimistic and to have more willpower to stand together in solidarity and to stand with resilience as to all the circumstances that we are witnessing now. And of course, I'd like to utilize this platform to again stress the importance of complying with all the health measures that are coming out from the competent health authorities in this regard, and remind everyone that it is an Islamic obligation, that it is fard, it is wajib under
mm,
the Islamic Sharia to observe all these necessary health measures. As much as we have to pray on time and to fast during Ramadan, still, it is also obligatory on each Muslim to observe all of these necessary health measures for their own safety and for protecting the life of everyone around them. And the Noble Quran in this regard is very clear, and that whoever saves one life, it is as if they have saved the entire humanity. So every time you would feel that you have had enough, or that it has been so long, or I cannot take it anymore, because we are humans and all of us
yeah.
experience similar or such thoughts, but still, this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the best from us in dealing with such a test.
I see. Yes. Jazakallah khair, Imam Hussam. I think we have one last point to discuss about the attaining the reward of fasting the whole year.
Yeah, this is a very important point, and it is definitely worth stressing it again as we are approaching the end of the webinar. And
Yeah.
also, it comes as a piece of extra good news, in addition to the good news that we mentioned before, that the Prophet ﷺ is offering us a great opportunity of attaining the reward of fasting for the whole year, simply by fasting only 6 days from the month of Shawwal. As the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said, whoever fasts the month of Ramadan and then follows it up with fasting 6 days from the month of Shawwal, they will get the reward of fasting for the entire year. So definitely we need to attain this reward of fasting for the entire
Mm,
year and not to miss it. And definitely, as I mentioned, it is permissible to combine the intention of fasting these 6 days with the intention of making up for any days that was or that were missed during the month of Ramadan. So happy Eid, inshallah, to you, Ustad Nasra, and to
Thank
all
you.
our dear
Same to you.
respected viewers and to all the Muslimito family. Thank you so much for this webinar and all your efforts during the month of Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept you for your preparation and for your breathtaking style of presentation. Jazakallah kullu
Oh,
khair for it.
thank you. Thank you, Ma'am Hussam.
Yeah,
And dear brothers and sisters, thank you so much for your time. Jazakumullah khairan. I wish you all have a happy Eid, inshallah, with your families. And see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
wa alaikum assalam.